Elon Musk's company Neuralink just got approved to do their first human trials for a brain-machine interface. Today, we're going to talk about brain-machine interfaces and how rapidly the technology is advancing. This is The Prescription Press, the podcast where we break down trending medical topics so we can live longer and healthier lives. I'm your host, Nolan Fisher. I'm a physician who believes that a healthy lifestyle is the best medication. Let's get into the episode. Sam Stix, welcome back to the pod.
What's going on, man?
Hey, not a whole lot. We're getting into topics today. And
Yes,
I think we need to talk about Neuralink.
Yeah, man. I know we just talked about it like 2 weeks ago, but
Let's do it
honestly, probably
again.
less than that. Yeah. You want
Well,
to
they
start it off?
My guess is they heard the prescription press and they were like, we have to, the FDA said, we got to do something about this.
It must be. It must be.
Yeah. So the tweet was that the FDA has officially approved Neuralink to start testing in human subjects.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
man.
monkeys are out of jobs.
Yeah, dude. It sounds like they are. And honestly, you know, it's funny. We were kind of talking about it, I guess, last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever that was now.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, it sounds like there's some animal rights issues, this and that. And it sounds like I kind of looked into it. I'm actually kind of shocked. It seems like the cards were kind of stacked against Neuralink, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. After we recorded that, I was like, oh, man, I don't know if this is going to be coming to fruition anytime soon. And then sure enough, like I said, I was reading articles and stuff, and it sounds like there were 1,500 animals that apparently had died during the testing process over the last few years. So
Yeah.
that was primarily monkeys, pigs, and then I guess I almost said
Rats?
mice and rats. Yes.
Yeah.
Mice
That's
and
what I
rats, I want
guess.
to say. And
I wonder what the ratio is, right?
I know.
I mean,
know.
if
This is messed up.
if they're New
I know.
York City subway rats, people are like, you're doing a service
Yep.
to the community.
That's actually a really good point. That's actually such a good point. Neuralink needs to have like a rat team that goes and just rounds up rats in New York City. Oh my God. That's a
The
perfect
problem is what if one gets loose with a Neuralink
idea.
and it just takes down society?
Starts driving the subways around and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
But
That'd be
so what they have approved is the test for the brain machine interface, which is crazy. It's going to allow people to potentially restore their vision, but particularly people that don't have movement of their arms and legs, they're going to be able to interact with a computer and move a cursor around on a screen. And then I'm presuming they're going to be able to interact with the screen in different ways as well.
Yeah.
It's like completely groundbreaking. It's crazy technology. They've had to invent all sorts of different pieces that will likely go on to be used for other things as well. And, Elon Musk is the face of Neuralink, but I can only imagine that they have just a host of like super advanced scientists, engineers, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, dude, I think the most fascinating thing is going to be who the first test subjects will be. Like you said, it's probably going to be people who are dealing with paralysis and blindness potentially. I've heard that same rumor is kind of like the first subjects, but I think there will be a ton of people lining up to do this. So it's going to be the amount of news stories that we're going to see out of this is going to be just insane. I'm really excited for what it's going to bring. Apparently Elon has really no concerns about Neuralink's safety. I mean, he said that he's willing to put it in his own kids. So, I mean, maybe we'll see his kids running around with him first. I don't know. I doubt piss a lot of people off, I'm sure too, but yeah, man.
So I think,
yeah, go ahead.
I think the really cool part of it is like, okay, it's a brain machine interface. And if that machine's a computer, great. But what if that machine that it's controlling is in your body? Right. So now all of a sudden, if you want to think, oh, well, I want to move my arms or legs, that becomes the next complicated step. But it could even come down to things like just controlling. If you're somebody that has no control of your bowel or bladder, you can't socialize, right? Because you're scared of how you're going to be perceived. And if you have a machine that now is responsible for your bowel or bladder, for emptying it, tells you when it needs to be empty, and then you can control it, that's life-changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, totally.
The other thing too is like Stephen Hawking got screwed, man. He came on too early. If he would have had this brain machine interface, dude, he would have invented TikTok way before anybody else did.
Yeah, man. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. You're right. It seems like that's like the case with a lot of medicine, though, right? Like people have conditions, and it's like if they only had it 10 years later, their quality of life would have been infinitely better. So
exactly. Yeah, that's why you just got to make it the next 10 years without some crazy disease.
Because the treatments just make it another 10 years. Everybody just keep making another 10, another 10, another 10. Oh my God, we're gonna be living forever, living on Mars. It's gonna be insane.
If you're like 100 years old, just make it another hour. Okay.
Yep.
You're just right. Whatever you gotta do, one foot in front of the other. Yep. All jokes aside, the other thing with Neuralink is that there's not just them working on this sort of issue. There is a Nature Journal article that just got published on a man that has a brain spine interface. And so this is, again, like we talked about the machine being not outside the body, being implanted in the body. It seems like this is the next step for Neuralink. But this guy had a spinal cord injury, and it was a cervical spinal cord injury at the C5, C6 level, which means that he may have had a little bit of function of like his shoulders going out. And he may even had just a little bit of a bending of his elbows, but probably not much else. It was considered an incomplete injury. So that means that he still had some sensation and some movement in the other areas of his body. So while he may have had normal strength with his shoulders like this, he probably did have some a little bit of hand strength as well. And then he had some leg strength, but he could really only stand. He couldn't walk. And then he got an implant that stimulated his muscles that allowed him to take like a few steps, but it was on a perfectly clean surface. He couldn't do it outdoors or anything. Well, then this group comes along and does this brain spine interface on him, where they essentially do what Elon Musk's company is doing with implanting the brain electrodes that then communicate with a certain area in the spinal cord that caused the nerves to fire, which fires the muscles. And they tested this like over and over on him, and they took the brain signals and were like telling him to move his leg, and then they had it interpret it. And eventually after a certain level of training, they got the signals down to like a 99% accuracy. So when his brain is telling his legs to move, it's like 99% right. And so they quickly were able to train it to coordinate the movements. And so they got him walking. He can stand for like several minutes without any support, which he couldn't do before. And then he could walk outside over like terrain and stuff. And there's all these different disability measures. There's this thing called the 5-minute walk test, which is just how far you can walk in 5 minutes. And he like doubled his improvement on pretty much everything. And so this is obviously just the start. With the artificial intelligence learning this stuff, who knows how good it could do, but it's already 99% accurate. So to me, it seems like this is one, fine tuning, two, this guy using the machining, actually gaining back muscle, because he has muscular atrophy as well. So it's going to take time just to build strength back. And then three, I think there's going to be specialized therapists that work particularly with working on these machines and training people how to use them and how to get used to it.
Totally.
It's crazy. And it's crazy that this came out just a couple days after Neuralink announced.
Yeah, dude, it's wild. I'm very, very excited for the future. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Somebody that's going to get into this is the VA. The military and VA are going to get into this. Yeah.
Dude, good call. Very good call.
They're really, really big into medical devices for like amputations and stuff like that. And they have the funding, the federal budget to like throw behind it. Yeah. And so devices are really cool, man. Medications were hot for years. All you heard about was stem cells. And those, honestly, at the end of the day, they're not super popular because they don't really work that well. And the evidence doesn't really back it up. They seem to be more of a money grab. And I think these devices and technology should be getting a huge focus from us, because we're already seeing like really cool things being able to be accomplished.
It's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Cool, dude.
Yeah. Did you hear about Pfizer's new drug?
I did a little bit. Is this in the realm of Ozempic at all, or not really?
Exactly. It
Okay.
is an oral version of a GLP-1, which is the same class of drug as Ozempic. Wegovy is another one, and Mounjaro are kind of like the big players in the game. The thing about those medications are that they are a synthetic version of a chemical that is in our body, and they're injected, and they last for usually about a week. And so you have to take a what looks like a big pen. It's about the size of like one of those pens that has like 5 different colors on it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And you actually have to put it up to your body. You click a button and a needle pops out and injects it. And they're expensive. They're like $1,000 a month. So definitely not cheap, but they're super effective for weight loss. And Pfizer just announced their studies, so they have to be taken with a grain of salt. But they said that their oral medication, which is taken twice per day, is more effective than Ozempic at treating type 2 diabetes and causing weight loss. So these people lost over the course of like 16 weeks, I believe they lost 10% of their weight.
Interesting.
So far, the best like large studies for this have been Mounjaro, and that's an injection. But people don't want to inject themselves. Like people don't want to stick themselves with needles. So if they can make it a pill,
question. Yeah, man,
it seems like a winner, right?
Yeah, dude, absolutely. I know. Even when I had my blood clot and I had to give myself injections, like subcutaneous fat. The problem is I have like very low body fat, so I was giving myself these injections in my lower stomach. I'm trying to remember what the medication is.
It was Lovenox.
Yep, Lovenox, exactly. So I was giving myself Lovenox injections. I couldn't do it, so I had to have my neighbor nurse come over and do it for me, all the time. And I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm making you put this little needle in my stomach, but I'm too terrified to do it myself." So yeah, I mean, a ton of people are not going to want to take that medication if it's an injectable. So the fact that it's oral is obviously a huge breakthrough potentially.
Yeah. The other thing that I think would be huge would be if the cost could come down to a reasonable amount. Totally. These drugs are already sold out. They're on back order at the pharmacy. So they're obviously very popular even at their current cost. I think if they can get the price down to a reasonable cost, they're going to be the most popular drugs in the world. They may be the most popular drugs in the world, even with the high cost, but it's going to be a $100 billion market because honestly, like obesity is kind of the biggest health crisis. That and mental health is the biggest health crisis in our country and really in most of the developed world. Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it earlier. 1 in 5 people are depressed and 1 in 3 people are obese. So
yeah,
crazy. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah. I have a fascinating discovery to tell you about.
Let's hear it.
It's the lumbar back roll. So it's NBA playoff time.
Okay.
And I occasionally have some backaches. And it's because of horrible posture.
Oh, yeah.
When I slouch in seats, my lower back kills me. And when I have a day where I sit in a seat for like 8 hours and I'm slouching the entire time, occasionally I get some, muscle spasms. It's NBA playoffs. And I remember that LeBron had this back roll on at some point, and I saw a picture of him with it on. So at the bottom of the article I was reading, they had a link to the article. It's called the McKenzie Lumbar Roll. And it looks almost like a cylinder that's like a foam roller size, and it's like $20 online. So I bought it. And let me tell you, it's an absolute game changer. I wrap it around my waist like it's a fanny pack, but it's on backwards.
Okay.
And I wear it in the car, and it just props the posture up. Oh yeah. I sit down at work. I have that thing. I pull it around my chair. And so that way it's in the right spot, and I just prop up, and my posture is so much better.
Is that right?
And my back feels great at the end of the day. Huh. And then it also makes my neck feel better because whenever you slouch, your shoulders come forward, your head comes forward. And whenever you straighten your lower back, your head all of a sudden comes in much better position.
Yeah, man.
So that's my $20 tip of the week is the lumbar roll. If LeBron James can do it, I mean, this guy spends $1 million a year on his body. If he's rocking the $20 lumbar roll, like, shouldn't we all?
Yeah, man. I like that. I know my posture's terrible. Being tall, especially too, it's just like everything is built for people who are shorter. Like I'm 6'7", and most people are, 5'9", 5'10". So it's like everything's built for everybody down here. So I'm always forward head posture, like slouched over. It's terrible. I'm going to look ridiculous when I'm 80. So I've got to get on this.
You got to get the lumbar roll, man. Yeah, because you got to still be dunking when you're 80.
Oh, that's the goal. I think I got another 20 years in me easily. I think. Okay. We'll see. We'll see.
Hold me to that, though. Of just life or dunking?
Oh, dunking.
I don't know, man. You're a big dog, Great Danes don't live very long.
I know, man. I know. Don't remind me. Don't remind me. I know. It's bad. Shit, dude. That's funny.
What about you? You got any topics?
Dude, I've got one selfish topic for you. And I know we talked about it earlier on our other episode with, I guess, just, trying to correct. We don't have to get into it too deep, but basically here's what I'm trying to say is I've got this shoulder
into my office.
Yes, please. I want a free telemedicine appointment from you right now. All right. So I've got this. Go ahead.
I can't guarantee HIPAA.
I know. Right. So here's the thing. I've got this shoulder pain that I'm getting specifically on the back of my shoulder, right? I've got like bony shoulders, whatever. I can feel my tendons and little knots and whatnot pretty easily. So particularly the movement of reaching across my body and then lifting something, even if it's a glass of water. And it's like this thing pops every time. I could probably pick up the microphone if I wanted to. But it's this movement here going backwards, lifting something, especially with weight, even if it's a pound, absolutely kills. And I'm like, the problem is it only really flares up after I do bench press or push-ups or shoulder press in particular. If I stay away from those exercises, I'm typically okay. But if I do those exercises, it's almost like without fail, I'm going to be miserable for the next week into minimum. Yeah. So it's like, and we talked about chronic pain versus acute pain earlier. It's like, this sounds like there's probably an underlying issue. I haven't really done anything in terms of even anti-inflammatories. I haven't done much, but I don't know.
So there's this thing. Probably? Yeah. So your rotator cuff comes around your shoulder, 4 muscles. With these movements like this, you particularly use a muscle called the supraspinatus and the infraspinatus. Okay. And they come along the outside, and they are really important with external rotation or lifting your arm up to the side. One of the things that's like kind of a dead giveaway for this is whenever people put their thumbs down, they bring their arms out to the side and a little bit forward, and then they try to lift weight that way. Yeah. You can feel that pinch in that same area. Yeah. And then another thing that happens with those rotator cuff muscles is something called impingement syndrome. And impingement syndrome is you have your shoulder, and it sits under like that. The ball of the head of your humerus sits under this little roof that's on the top of your shoulder. And it's called the acromion. And it's there to keep your shoulder in place. Like it helps with keeping your shoulder in place. It's actually part of your scapula. Okay. And your collarbone also meets there. And so that's the acromion clavicular joint is there. And that's when you hear about people separating their shoulder. It's at that joint. But your rotator cuff muscles go underneath that acromion, but over the head of your humerus. So it's a tight area. And so it's actually called shoulder impingement syndrome. Okay. And it's the most common type of shoulder pain, and actually wears on your rotator cuff tendons. And what happens as a result of like the inflammation, you develop a bursitis there. And bursa just line the muscles, and they go against any surface that your muscle or tendon could be rubbing on, and it's to protect it. Well, when they get inflamed, they pop. And so they pop, and they sometimes get painful. So whenever you do bench press, or shoulder. So whenever you're doing shoulders, you'll be working that muscle, and you can be wearing it out and just like causing some of that to get irritated. But when you do bench press, you actually tighten your chest, which pulls your posture forward. And as a result of pulling the posture forward, it actually makes that space smaller.
Interesting.
And so one of the best ways to fix impingement syndrome, one is to work on your rotator cuff muscles and just do some rehabilitation. That's where the big exercises there are called I's, T's, and Y's. They're the ones where you bring your arms out to the side, you bring them out in front, and then you bring them out at a diagonal. You don't want to bring them over. You don't want to bring them over shoulder level, because then they start to pinch. But you just want to bring them up to that level. You want like light exercises. You want to do like 5-pound weights. and you want it there. You want it. If you feel it aching, that's fine. If it hurts, it's time to shut it down.
Okay.
Okay. And then if you do that over the course of weeks, what happens is it actually tightens your rotator cuff up, which gets that space a little more open. And then if you work on your posture as well, you'll open that space up. And by working on your posture, basically what I'm saying is stretch your pec muscles, which will loosen up here, and then pull your shoulder blades together. So doing things like rows and face pulls will tighten up your back, which then opens up that entire space. Okay. And so impingement syndrome is from a variety of things. The biggest thing is posture and just how we use our shoulders out front of us and over our head and stuff. It's super common.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
And then finally, you can actually develop irregularities in how tight your shoulder capsule is. So over your shoulder, you actually have a capsule that like stabilizes the joint. And if you have ever seen the sleeper stretch, that's where you lay on your side. And if you imagine if I'm laying on my side right now and the ground's over on this side, if you go like this and you start pushing your arm down this way, you can feel a stretch in the back. Okay. That actually loosens up the shoulder capsule, which again causes more room. And so that's one of the best stretches to do for this issue.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's impingement syndrome is super common. It's like the most common irritation of shoulder pain. And there's things you could do, like I always talk about with anti-inflammatories, where you take anti-inflammatories like naproxen, you take it twice a day for a week straight. You really beat down that inflammation, and then you avoid the activities that irritate it, and then you rehab it. Once you get that rehab to a place where it's acceptable, then you start getting back into those activities. But with a rehab, you're talking about a 12-week process. So you really build up that strength and you don't irritate it in the meantime. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I was reading about, obviously your mind goes to the worst place first whenever you're reading about an injury that you have. So I was hearing about all the surgeries and things for rotator cuffs. And that sounds like that's a long process. And it sounds like it's somewhat sketchy.
Shoulder surgeries are notoriously bad.
Yeah. I want to avoid that at all costs. Yeah, I mean, you see people who are like, I watch these chiropractic videos sometimes just because I think people like to watch because they're like almost relaxing in a weird way to watch.
They're satisfying. Yeah. It's like watching Dr. Pimple Popper, it's gross, but you kind of like it.
No, exactly. There's this doctor down in New Mexico who gets a lot of like UFC fighters who live down there. And he gets guys who are like in the WWE that come in and stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all. He's got like this big hammer that it's probably a crock, but he got this big hammer he like uses on people's arms and stuff. But I'm like, these people are like pretty famous multimillionaires, and a lot of times they come with really bad shoulder issues. Like I said, he uses this hammer thing. I'm like, there's no way this is working for these people. Yeah. But as I watch him, I'm like, these people have millions of dollars, and they're doing everything to basically control the fact they don't want shoulder surgery. Like that's a last resort for them. You know what I mean? They're being advised that that's not a good alternative potentially.
I think shoulder surgery is really good for one main indication with rotator cuffs, like when it comes to rotator cuff pain, and that's if you have an acute tear. So there are like some people that something falls and they reach out to grab it and it just tears their rotator cuff. Okay. Those people do well with surgery, and if you don't do surgery on them, their function just goes to hell.
And would that show on an MRI? How would you diagnose that?
Absolutely. Yeah. That would show up clinically. Okay. So we do a set of shoulder tests to test the rotator cuff. And so the one that's like the most common is called an empty can test. And you could imagine if you held your arms out to the side and then you brought them forward, almost so they're at like an angle to the right and left. And then and it was like you're holding a can. If you flipped your hand over, like you were dumping the can out to empty it. And then if we push down on the shoulder there and it gives way, that's usually a sign that there's a tear. But most people, and even a lot of people with tears are strong enough to keep their arm up, but like the complete tears give away, and it's kind of a dead ring. It's kind of like a dead giveaway if you have like a injury where there's a pop and then there's a loss of strength. That's whenever you start to see them. But the vast majority of people that have shoulder pain, which is like extremely common, it's because of chronic issues that don't need surgery, or surgery is like the last option.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: if somebody came in presenting rotator cuff injury, and let's say it was a partial tear, would you recommend surgery if it was a partial tear, or only if it's
rehab it?
Okay. Yep. Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that most of the partial tears, I mean, most people when their shoulder starts to degrade after years and years of use have significant tears as well. Yeah, it's very common.
Yeah, man. I think like you said, there's no doubt it's got to be postural. There's got to be some things I can do. I've always tended to have, I think, more of a focus on my chest and my lats specifically. And I think I've done some reading on the lat aspect as well. If I kind of overdeveloped lats and underdeveloped traps, and it's like I would think that your trap would probably help, if anything, bring that bone up, like you talked about your shoulder, at least probably. So you think maybe
it'll prop you up more.
So you think more of a focus, because like I said, lats. I think people associate lat. If you have good lats, it's like you have a healthy back. But a lot of times, if they're overdeveloped, like they'll almost pull your shoulder down in a sense. It almost seems.
Yeah. So I would think that people, when it comes to back, they kind of over index on doing lats, like lat pull downs,
pull-ups.
I don't think they put enough interest in pinching the shoulder blades together. Yeah. Pinching the shoulder blades together is very important, but also the posture, dude. Just think about how much we sit, and then what percentage of that time our posture is actually good. I think most back pain and neck pain can be fixed just by having good posture. Yeah. Because we were really like, we are sitting in with bad posture so much. It's crazy. It's crazy. Totally. Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, man.
Well, dude, thanks for letting me be selfish there. I appreciate that. I'll post this telemedicine appointment maybe as a separate clip, like my shoulder appointment with Dr. Nolan Fisher. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, can't guarantee HIPAA. That's all I got. That's a wrap. That's this episode of the Prescription Press.
Cool, dude. Let's do it again.
Unless you got any other injuries we got to break down, but maybe we'll do that next time. I
want to tell people too, maybe if people want to comment or something on like the YouTube video of like topics they want, or maybe something they're dealing with, they want more info on, like we'd love to dive into that and help people out who are listeners. So it'd be kind of cool.
Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time.
See you, folks.
Later, Samuel.